There happen to be at least 7 states in the United States that have a Mount Logan, and there's one in Canada as well. In fact, theirs is a lot taller than ours. In fact, the second highest peak in all of the Northern Hemisphere is in Canada, named Mount Logan, and it's almost 20,000 feet high. That's incredible. Now, the reason I tell you all of that is because that probably is where today's recipe got its name. In fact, those of you who are avid backpackers know all about this already. It came from the backpackers community who are always searching for some kind of food item that they can carry with them that is going to hold up under the rigors of being packed in a jostled backpack that doesn't weigh a whole lot, that isn't going to get all messed up and ruined and crumbled. It's going to have a whole lot of nutrition and sustained energy that it provides them as they hike up those high mountains. So those of you who are into backpacking already know today we're going to make Logan bread. Now, this isn't like any bread you've made before. This is sort of like a Cliff Bar version, sort of like a cookie bar, only thicker and denser and way more packed with nutrition. I can't wait to share my version of how to make Logan bread just around the corner. So don't go away. All right, let's start with half a cup of warm water. In fact, as warm as you can get it. I'd say hot as the tap will give you. Put in half a cup of water. Easy enough. Now you're going to want 1 full cup of oil. And if you're in doubt about which oils last the longest, that's what you're trying to go for here. This is canola oil, and that has a shelf life generally of at least 1 to 2 years. I think you could use ghee, or you could use light olive oil would be another good choice, but there's a cup full of oil. Here's half a cup of raw wild honey. And if I were you, I would use whatever is local to you, but we're gonna go ahead and put in half a cup of that honey. And let me scrape it out so we don't miss any of it. Next, we're going to put in half a cup of molasses, and the darker the better in my opinion. I love the taste of this. So we'll put that in, and then I'll scrape out the last of it. You want to get every bit of it. Again, if you didn't have molasses and you wanted to put in a full cup of honey, that would work just fine, or vice versa. All right, I've got that pretty scraped out. Now that we've got the wet ingredients in here, I'm going to put in the additives that are going to soak in that and get kind of plump while we mix the dry ingredients in the other bowl. For this, you can use any number of different kinds of dried fruits, but I've got right here a half a cup of dried chopped cherries. If I put them in whole, they're just too big, so you chop them up as best as you can. They'll be coarse and rough, and some bigger and smaller chunks, but half a cup of dried cherries that you've chopped up. And then, of course, one of my favorites, and if I hadn't had the cherries, I would have just doubled this amount of cranberries. This is supposed to be a half a cup of cranberries, but I always get a little ambitious and overdo it. It's definitely a rounded half cup of dried cranberries, but we're going to put all that in there. I love the tartness of that. And then you're going to put in a half a cup of either walnuts, or today I'm using pecans, whichever is your favorite, or if you wanted sliced almonds, you could do that. These don't go rancid as quickly as almonds do, so I'm going to go ahead and put in half a cup of chopped up pecans. Now, I'm going to stir this up, and it'll just be a mess here for a minute, but then we're going to add these 4 eggs that are waiting their turn to be added to this, and we'll let this all soak in together while we mix those dry ingredients. It already smells wonderful. The eggs that I'm using today are from the local chickens, so some are big and some are small. I'm going to put in 4 eggs. So 3 of them are pretty little and 1 giant one to go with them. Now, I will say this, everyone has their own opinion about Logan bread and whether you should put eggs in it or not. I'm going to cook it very well, and I'm not expecting it to last longer than about 4 months. So I'm not concerned about using eggs in this. But if you would like to, swap it out for what works with you. Use a little bit more of the chia seed or applesauce. Those are common replacements for eggs. You do whatever works. Here's that Mac Daddy. That might be a double yolker. I think it is. It was a double yolk. The cranberries and cherries come to rest at the bottom, but that's okay. As long as everything is really stirred in well, we'll just let it rest and let it hopefully plump up a little bit. Before I stir all these dry ingredients together, I went ahead and got the oven preheating at 280 Fahrenheit, which is close to around 140 Celsius. All right, with that in mind, let's go ahead and stir some of these together. I'm going to start with 1 cup of organic whole wheat flour. You could probably use regular white flour, but whole wheat would be better, and organic, of course, is always best. So there's 1 cup of that. And then for me today, I could use a 1.5 cups of rye flour, but instead I like to use a 1/2 cup of chia seeds and a 1/2 cup of flax. Now you can get creative with this, but I'll tell you, if you were on the trail, don't put too much flax in. You want flax, but if you put way too much in, you will regret it because it will act sort of as something that loosens your system up. So 1/2 cup is plenty for that recipe. Then I'm going to use 1 full cup of oats. And I'll tell you, I don't use the quick oats. I like to use the kind that have just a little bit more nutrition, that are not the 5-minute version. This is just the regular oatmeal. Next, we're going to put in a cup worth of wheat germ. I love the taste that this gives it, kind of a nutty flavor, that wheat germ, and it's very rich in good nutrition for you. You're going to want 1/2 cup of powdered milk. So there, we've got that in. Now we're going to put in 1/4 cup of brown sugar. And I did pack this down because I like mine a little bit sweet. You don't have to pack yours down, but I packed it down and I gave it just a little bit of an extra lump on top of it. There's a 1/2 cup of brown sugar. Now we want 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, not baking soda, baking powder. There's 1.5 teaspoons of that, and 1 teaspoon of salt. And that is all of the dry ingredients that we need. So we'll get this put together. We're going to stir this up really well, and I'm actually going to stir again all of those wet ingredients before we stir all of these together in this big bowl. Like I said earlier, you get creative. If you love wheat germ, if you wanted to put some coconut in there, this is your chance. If you wanted to put some quinoa in there or some other grain, I hope that you would just experiment, because it is super forgiving, and my whole goal is to try and pack as much nutrition in as I possibly can. Calories and nutrition, but also make it taste really good. So cinnamon is another good one to add, and you could even add some almond extract. Those are some of my favorite tastes. Almond extract in the wet ingredients if you'd like. And get all of that yummy stuff out of there. You've got to remember, this is going to be very different than anything that you've called bread before. This is not going to be like nut bread. It's not going to be like a yeast bread for sure. This is going to be sort of like cookie bars. I'm always looking for a replacement, and in the future we'll have an episode on how to make a replacement for Cliff Bars, but this is about as close as you're going to get with this Logan bread in a different kind of way. Also, you kind of think of it as some sort of a healthy version of between a granola bar and a Kind bar, or my favorite are Lara bars. This is sort of like that, but just packed with as much protein and nutrition as you can get in there. It's not going to puff up. You want it to be very dense, because if it's going to travel in your backpack and not crumble up or get all, you don't want it to be too gooey, you don't want it to be too crumbly, you want it to just hold its shape and still taste really delicious. So it's just its own unique version of bread. All right, I've got it very well stirred up. The oven is already heated and ready to go. And so over here I've prepared a pan, and this is, I believe, a 9 by 9 inch pan. I think you could use an 8 by 9 or any close variation of this. You would want to either line it with parchment paper, as I have done here, and I like to even go up 2 of the sides so that it's easy to just pull it all out when you're ready. Or you could flour it after you've put a little bit of oil in there, so it comes out very easily that way. This is wonderful though, and so we're going to go ahead and just pour it on in there. You can see how thick and dense that is, and that's exactly what it's supposed to be like. Okay, you can see how easily that spread itself out. I don't even need to worry about it. We're going to go ahead and put this in the oven and bake it for, I know you're going to choke. You noticed it's kind of a low temperature that we've put on this. We're going to bake it for 80 to 90 minutes because you need it to be absolutely baked well. You need it to not have any gooiness from not being fully cooked. So 80 to 90 minutes, you're going to test it with that toothpick, make sure it comes out entirely clean. And then we're going to just set it out on the counter and giving it about 10 or 15 minutes to just cool down a little bit before we even try to start cutting it. But then when it is time to cut it, you're going to cut it larger than you would expect. We're going to make 3-inch by 3-inch blocks with this. So, and remember, this is not like your typical bread. This is going to be much heavier duty and thicker. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut it in 3-inch squares before we get it all wrapped up tight, and take a taste test of a little bit of it while it's still relatively warm. All right, let me get a piece of this out for you to see. Oh my word, it looks wonderful. Look at that. Served on one of Grandma's antique plates, it has to taste good. But the way that I would serve this, just so you know, or the way that I would keep it in my backpack, would be to wrap it up tight in either tin foil or wax paper. Now, you could do both. Some people like to wrap it first in parchment or wax paper, then in tin foil, but ultimately I'm going to put it in a small snack-sized Ziploc bag, and that's going to keep it nice. But make sure it's come completely to room temperature first, and really it's going to keep well like that for a good number of weeks without any issue. I just wouldn't wrap it up until it's fully cooled, because you don't want that moisture having nowhere to go once you've got it wrapped up tight. I've wrapped this piece up, and I'll wrap all the rest of these up to go in go bags, get home bags, and for hiking. But look at this one piece. I just want to show you this. This is perfectly moist without being crumbly, without being too gooey or anything like that. It's not going to fall apart. It's very hardy. I want to break it with my hands just so you can kind of see how that's going to look. And this is still just a little bit warm, so you know. Isn't that beautiful inside? It smells amazing, and I can't wait to have a little bit of it. It will get just a little bit drier with time, and you want that, but it won't be hard to palate. You won't have to have a drink with it. Let me taste this, and I'll try to give you a clue of what I'm experiencing. It tastes a little bit like Grandma's molasses cookies. Not super sweet though. It has a lot of, a little bit of tartness from the cranberry, a lot of nuttiness from all of those different seeds that we put in there and grains. I think you're going to really enjoy this, and you would probably equally enjoy it if you put chocolate chips and coconut in it and went a different direction with the flavors. But this version I absolutely love, and I'm going to enjoy the whole rest of this piece right here at home. Well, my walk today is over, and though I didn't hike up any steep mountains today, I will say that I'm very thankful that I have Logan bread with me and a water bottle full of some warm water that's going to keep me warm the rest of the day. As it gets chillier, and especially traveling in the winter, you end up burning more calories than you realize. So this Logan bread is perfect. I made it just a few days ago, but I wish you were here to taste it with me. It tastes like home. It has that molasses and the good cherries and cranberries in there. It's absolutely scrumptious. So I'm going to enjoy it now, and I hope you plan on joining us next week for another episode. Until I see you again though, will you go out and find someone and be a blessing to them today? Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye. Before you go, I would love to share with you just a quick word of scripture. This is out of the Old Testament in the Holy Bible, back in that book of Lamentations, and it's in chapter 3, verses 25 and 26. It says this: "The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." Now go spread the word.